Dr. Hyun rubbed his tired eyes as he worked alone in his small research station, floating in deep space. The metal walls hummed quietly around him, and outside the tiny windows, stars sparkled like diamonds against the black void. He had been working for 12 hours straight, trying to fix the deep space scanners that helped his people study distant galaxies. The Galactic Council had one rule that every species in the galaxy knew by heart: never, ever send any message on frequency 427-331. This wasn't just a suggestion or a guideline. It was the most important law in all of galactic civilization. They called it the Silent Protocol, and it had kept the galaxy safe for 5,000 years. Everyone knew the stories, though most were too scared to talk about them openly. Long ago, something terrible had answered when someone used that frequency. Something so horrifying that entire star systems had been destroyed. The survivors made sure everyone understood. That frequency was forbidden forever. Hyun knew the rules just like everyone else, but he was focused on his work and didn't think about them as he adjusted his equipment. The scanner array was acting up again, jumping between different frequencies as he tried to calibrate it. These old machines always gave him trouble, but his small research station couldn't afford newer equipment. Then it happened. A power surge shot through the station's electrical systems like lightning. Hyun watched in horror as his transmission array went crazy, sending signals across dozens of different frequencies all at once. The display screen flickered and sparked, showing numbers that made his blood run cold. 31. The forbidden frequency had been activated for exactly 3 seconds. 3 seconds that would change everything. Across the galaxy, ancient warning systems that had been silent for thousands of years suddenly came to life. On the Council's homeworld, elderly leaders who had lived through centuries of peace woke, up screaming from nightmares they thought they had forgotten. Emergency meetings were called. War fleets that hadn't moved in decades began powering their engines. Meanwhile, far away on a small blue planet in a quiet corner of the galaxy, Lieutenant Mina was having a very boring night shift. Earth's rebuilt Arecibo facility was supposed to listen for signals from space, but most nights brought nothing but static and background noise from distant stars. Mina was drinking her 3rd cup of coffee when her screen lit up with something incredible. The signal was unlike anything in Earth's databases. It wasn't random noise or natural radiation from a star. This was clearly artificial, created by intelligence. The mathematics were complex but beautiful, showing patterns that seemed almost alive. Earth's first contact protocols were very clear. If they ever received a signal from alien intelligence, they were supposed to report it immediately and wait for instructions from their superiors. No one was allowed to respond without permission from the highest levels of government. But Mina looked at those beautiful mathematical patterns dancing across her screen and made a choice that would change galactic history forever. She couldn't just ignore this. Someone out there was trying to communicate, and they deserved an answer. Her response was simple but elegant. She sent back prime numbers, 2, 3, 5, 7, 11. Then she added some basic physics constants, the mathematical language that any intelligent species would understand. It was humanity's way of saying, hello, we're here and we're intelligent too. As her transmission raced through space along the forbidden frequency, Mina had no idea she had just broken the most sacred law in galactic civilization. Dr. Hyun couldn't believe what he was seeing on his screen. After sending that accidental signal on the forbidden frequency, he expected nothing but silence and probably a visit from Council security forces. Instead, his equipment was showing him something that made his 3 hearts beat faster than they ever had before. Someone had answered back. The response wasn't random noise or some kind of cosmic accident. These were carefully crafted mathematical sequences that showed a deep understanding of physics and mathematics. What shocked Hyun most was how elegant and creative the solutions were. His own species, the Zephyrians, had spent thousands of years developing these same mathematical concepts. Yet whoever sent this signal seemed to understand them naturally, almost intuitively. Hyun's hands shook as he recorded everything. The mathematics showed patterns of thinking that were completely different from anything in the galactic archives. These beings approached problems from angles that no known species had ever considered. They weren't just intelligent, they were brilliantly creative. This was nothing like the ancient enemy that had terrorized the galaxy 5,000 years ago. Those beings had been cold, mechanical, focused only on destruction and control. But these new signals showed something the archives said the enemy never possessed: restraint and curiosity, rather than aggression. Meanwhile, on the other side of the galaxy, Lieutenant Mina was about to have the worst day of her career. She had just finished her shift and was heading home when Colonel Jin stormed into the control room. His face was red with anger and fear. "Mina, tell me you didn't do what I think you did," he said, pointing at the transmission logs on her computer screen. "Sir, I received a signal that was clearly from an intelligent source. I followed basic first contact procedures and responded with simple mathematics to show we're intelligent too," Mina explained, though she could see Jin's expression getting darker by the second. "You followed what procedures?" Jin's voice rose to a shout. "There are no procedures for this. You were supposed to report it immediately and wait for orders from command." Within minutes, Jin was on secure phone lines to military commanders around the world. Within an hour, emergency meetings were happening in Washington, Moscow, Beijing, and every other major capital on Earth. For the first time in human history, they had confirmed contact with alien intelligence. And it had happened because one night shift officer decided to say hello. The debates were intense and frightening. Some leaders wanted to shut down all communications immediately. Others argued that since contact had already been made, they needed to handle it carefully. Everyone agreed on one thing: this was the most important moment in human history. Far across space, the Galactic Council was having their own emergency meetings, but theirs were filled with terror rather than excitement. Ancient council members who had lived for thousands of years and seen the rise and fall of entire civilizations spoke in whispered, frightened voices about the return of their greatest nightmare. "The enemy has returned," declared Elder Thakmor, his voice echoing through the great council chamber. "After 5,000 years of silence, they have answered the forbidden call once again." Massive war fleets that had been in storage for centuries were suddenly brought online. Weapons that hadn't been fired in millennia were tested and prepared. Scientists worked frantically through their archives, searching for any technology that might be effective against beings who had once reshaped entire star systems with their thoughts. But Dr. Hyun kept his secret communications going, becoming more convinced with each exchange that these beings were different. Their mathematics showed not just intelligence, but wisdom, creativity, and most importantly, restraint. Elder Thakmor stood in the center of the great council chamber, his ancient form casting long shadows under the dim lighting. At over 3,000 years old, he was one of the few beings alive who had access to the complete historical archives. His voice carried the weight of unimaginable horror as he began to tell the story that most council members only knew through whispered rumors. "Listen carefully," he began, his words echoing off the chamber walls. "What I'm about to tell you is why we created the Silent Protocol, why we chose 5,000 years of caution over the curiosity that once defined our civilization." The chamber fell completely silent. Even the youngest council members, barely a few centuries old, understood they were about to hear the truth behind their greatest fear. 5,000 years ago, we were different," Thakmor continued. "We were explorers, adventurers, eager to meet any intelligence we could find in the vast darkness of space. Our ancestors built the great listening stations and sent messages to every corner of the galaxy. When we heard signals, we answered them with joy and excitement." He paused, his old eyes growing distant as he accessed memories that had been locked away for millennia. Then came the signal on frequency 427.331. It was unlike anything we had ever encountered. Complex, beautiful, almost musical in its mathematical patterns. Our greatest scientists studied it for weeks, convinced they had found evidence of a civilization far more advanced than our own. So they did what we always did. They answered. The temperature in the chamber seemed to drop as Thakmor's voice grew darker. The response came within days, and it changed everything we thought we knew about the universe. These beings sent us mathematical proofs that completely destroyed our understanding of physics. They showed us how to manipulate matter at the quantum level, how to bend space and time like clay, how to reach into the heart of stars and control their burning. Several younger council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. This level of technology was beyond anything their current civilization could imagine, but we quickly realized these weren't gifts, Thakmor said, his voice now barely above a whisper. They were demonstrations. Within a week of that first exchange, we watched in horror as an entire solar system began rearranging itself. Planets were pulled from their orbits and moved like pieces on a game board. Moons were combined and reshaped into geometric patterns that hurt to look at. The horror in his voice was unmistakable now. The beings we had contacted weren't interested in friendship or trade or cultural exchange. They had come to remake reality according to their own impossible vision. Stars were harvested for energy like fruit from trees. The fundamental laws of physics that held our universe together were twisted and broken to serve their purposes. Thakmor's voice cracked slightly as he continued. We tried to fight them, of course. The greatest military alliance in galactic history was formed in just weeks. Every species, every government, every military force united against this common threat. But how do you fight beings who can rewrite the laws of physics with their thoughts? The war lasted exactly 3 months and 7 days, he said, consulting his internal memory banks. When it ended, entire sectors of the galaxy were left as wastelands where the normal rules of reality no longer applied. Space stations would suddenly find themselves existing in 17 dimensions instead of 3. Planets would age backwards, their histories unraveling until they became cosmic dust. Stars would burn with impossible colors that drove any observer insane. The chamber was so quiet that the soft hum of the life support systems seemed loud. The survivors, what few of us remained, made a pact written in the blood of 1 billion civilizations, Thakmor concluded. Never again would we answer the forbidden call. Never again would we invite such cosmic horror into our realm. We built the silent protocol on the graves of everything we had lost. He looked around the chamber at the frightened faces staring back at him. And now, after 5,000 years of careful silence, someone has answered that call again. The ancient enemy has returned, and everything we've built since that terrible war may be about to end. Dr. Sue hadn't slept in 3 days. Deep beneath the streets of Seoul, in a command center that most people didn't even know existed, she stared at equations that should have been impossible for any human to understand. The coffee cups around her desk had grown cold hours ago, but she couldn't tear herself away from the alien mathematics flowing across her computer screens. This doesn't make sense, she muttered to herself for the 100th time. But not because the math was too difficult. It made sense too easily. These incredibly complex alien concepts about how the universe worked were clicking into place in her mind like puzzle pieces she had been searching for her entire life. Dr. Kang, her colleague, rushed over with a stack of printed equations. So, you need to see this. The theoretical physics department at the university says these calculations should take their entire team at least 6 months to fully understand. But look at this. He pointed to her notebook, filled with her handwritten solutions to problems that had stumped alien civilizations for centuries. She had solved them in just 4 hours. I don't understand it either, Sue admitted, rubbing her tired eyes. When I look at their mathematical models for quantum mechanics, or how stars form, or even how dark matter behaves, it's like I already know the answers, like I'm remembering something instead of learning it for the first time. The team of scientists gathered around her desk was growing larger each hour as word spread through the facility. Dr. Yang, one of Earth's most respected physicists, picked up her calculations and shook his head in amazement. Sue, do you realize what you've done here? You've just solved the unified field theory that Einstein spent the last 30 years of his life trying to figure out. And you did it during your lunch break. But Sue wasn't celebrating. The ease with which humans were understanding these alien concepts was starting to scare her. What if we're not as different from them as we think? She said quietly. What if there's something about human minds that makes us naturally good at this kind of thinking? Meanwhile, thousands of light years away, Dr. Hyun was having similar thoughts, but from the opposite perspective. Each day, his secret communications with the humans revealed new levels of their terrifying intelligence. Problems that had challenged the greatest minds in galactic civilization for thousands of years were being solved by these Earth creatures. in just days. What worried Hyun most were the questions the humans were starting to ask. They weren't just content to exchange basic mathematics anymore. They wanted to know about advanced energy manipulation, about technologies for bending space and time, about concepts that the Galactic Council had forbidden even their most trusted scientists from studying. "They're learning too fast," Hyun whispered to himself as he read their latest transmission. The humans weren't just copying alien knowledge, they were improving it, finding new applications that no one had ever considered before. Back on Earth, Admiral Park sat in his office reviewing intelligence reports that made his blood run cold. In just 2 weeks of mathematical exchanges with aliens, humanity had gained enough theoretical knowledge to revolutionize their technology 100 times over. Human scientists weren't just understanding alien concepts, they were reverse engineering them into practical applications. "Sir," his aide reported, "the engineering teams say they've figured out how to build a basic gravity manipulator based on the mathematical principles in the alien communications. They could have a prototype ready within a month." Admiral Park stared out his window at the city below. A month ago, humanity's most advanced spacecraft could barely make it to Mars. Now they were on the verge of technology that could reshape reality itself. "And if these aliens turn out to be hostile?" he asked quietly. "Sir, at the rate we're advancing, our defensive capabilities will be unlike anything the galaxy has ever seen. The question is whether we'll still be human by the time we're done learning from them." Neither side understood what was really happening. They were looking at reflections of the same cosmic power that had once terrorized the galaxy. Humanity was awakening to abilities they never knew they possessed, while the aliens were remembering exactly why they had spent 5,000 years learning to fear beings with these capabilities. The mathematical conversations continued, but with each exchange, both species were moving closer to a terrifying truth about human nature that would change everything. Across the galaxy, the largest war fleet in 5,000 years was moving toward Earth like a storm of metal and death. Thousands of ships that had been built specifically to destroy worlds cut through hyperspace with terrifying purpose. Each vessel carried weapons powerful enough to crack planets in half, and their computer minds had been calculating the best ways to destroy civilizations for longer than human history. Commander Veltar stood on the bridge of his flagship, staring at tactical displays that showed the route to the small blue planet that threatened everything he held dear. He was over 2,000 years old enough to have heard the stories from survivors of the ancient war. In his mind, he wasn't leading an invasion. He was preventing the end of all galactic civilization. Target confirmed, his tactical officer reported. Sol system, third planet from the star. Population estimated at 8 billion beings. 8 billion potential world destroyers, Veltar corrected grimly. "We cannot allow even one to survive and spread their corruption to the rest of the galaxy." Meanwhile, on Earth, Professor Hay worked frantically in a converted airplane hangar that had become humanity's most important research facility. Around her, the brightest minds from every nation on Earth worked together on the most crucial project in human history, turning alien mathematics into weapons that could defend their world. "The gravity manipulation equations are starting to make sense," she announced to her exhausted team. "If we can build the focusing array correctly, we should be able to create localized gravity wells strong enough to trap incoming missiles." Dr. Nam, working at a nearby computer station, looked up with excitement. "The space-time bending calculations just clicked for me. I think I know how to make shields that can deflect energy weapons by redirecting them through folded space." What amazed everyone was how naturally these impossible concepts came to human minds. Alien science that should have taken decades to understand was being grasped and improved upon in just weeks. It was as if humanity had been waiting their entire evolutionary history for these ideas to be revealed. On the Moon, Captain Lee supervised the construction of Earth's first real starships in hastily built shipyards. The vessels taking shape around him looked nothing like the sleek, elegant ships that other galactic civilizations preferred. Human ships were angular, aggressive, and built with a philosophy that no alien species would have considered. "These ships won't win any beauty contests," Lee admitted to his engineering team, but they're designed to do things that enemy ships won't expect. Every system has 3 backup plans, and every weapon can be used in at least 5 different Sawahis. The human approach to spaceship design reflected something unique about their species. They didn't just build tools, they built tools that could become other tools when needed. Their ships carried equipment that could be rapidly reconfigured for dozens of different purposes, making them unpredictable in ways that would confuse enemies who expected standardized military tactics. Dr. Hyun watched the preparations for war from his research station and felt sick to his stomach. Every day he sent desperate messages to the Galactic Council, trying to convince them that these humans were different from the ancient enemy. Every day, his warnings were ignored. These beings show creativity, restraint, and wisdom, he transmitted to the council chambers. They are not the destroyers from our history. Please, you must call off the fleet before we make a terrible mistake. But the council had made their decision. The Sol system would be sterilized. Every human would be destroyed before they could develop the full extent of their terrifying capabilities. What the council didn't know was that Hyun had discovered something that would change everything. Deep in his analysis of the human mathematical patterns, he had found genetic markers embedded in their thinking processes, quantum signatures that perfectly matched archived data from the original enemy that had terrorized the galaxy 5,000 years ago. These humans weren't a new species that happened to think like the ancient destroyers. They were the direct descendants of those same beings, evolved and changed over millions of years, but carrying the same fundamental potential for reshaping reality. The irony was crushing. The galaxy was preparing to destroy the children of their ancient enemy, never realizing that those children had learned the wisdom their ancestors lacked. Everything went wrong because of a single mistranslated word. Dr. Min had been working for days on what she thought was a peaceful message to the alien fleet approaching Earth. She wanted to ask for territorial considerations for peaceful expansion, essentially requesting that both species work together to avoid conflict and find ways to coexist in the galaxy. But the alien translation computers, designed thousands of years ago when the galaxy's greatest fear was conquest and domination, interpreted her message very differently. To them, her request sounded like a demand for galactic subjugation, a threat that humanity would take over the entire galaxy unless their territorial demands were met. At almost the same moment, human intelligence analysts were studying the movement patterns of the approaching alien fleet. To their military minds, the coordinated approach of thousands of warships looked like nothing but a massive invasion force preparing for a planetary assault. They had no way of knowing that the aliens saw this as a cautious defensive formation, designed to contain what they believed was an existential threat. The tragic irony wasn't lost on anyone who understood what was happening. Both species were desperately trying to prevent a war through the same communication channel that had started the entire crisis. Human diplomats sent increasingly urgent messages trying to clarify their peaceful intentions, while alien commanders transmitted warnings and ultimatums that they hoped would make humanity surrender without a fight. But trust was breaking down on both sides. Every diplomatic message seemed to contain hidden threats. Every military movement looked like preparation for attack. The same mathematical language that had initially brought them together was now being twisted by fear and misunderstanding. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of his flagship as the human defense fleet took position near Pluto, at the very edge of the solar system. Through the viewing ports, he could see the distant stars that had once seemed so peaceful. Now they would serve as the backdrop for humanity's first space battle. "How many ships are we facing?" he asked his tactical officer. "Latest count shows over 8,000 alien vessels, sir. We have 12 ships ready for combat." The numbers were impossible. Humanity was outnumbered by more than 600 to 1. But Lee's ships carried something that made the odds less hopeless than they appeared. Weapons and tactics, designed by human minds that thought about warfare in ways no other species had ever considered. "Remember," he announced to his fleet, over the communication system, "we're not trying to win a traditional battle. We're trying to survive long enough to prove we're not the monsters they think we are." Then the alien fleet emerged from hyperspace like a swarm of metallic insects, filling the space beyond Pluto with ships that gleamed with deadly purpose. For a few moments, both fleets held their positions, humanity's tiny force facing down an armada that could have conquered entire star systems. That's when the automated systems took over and turned a tense standoff into the first shots of an interstellar war. Both species had programmed their ships with defensive systems designed to protect them from surprise attacks. When human ships detected what appeared to be weapon targeting systems locking onto them, their computers automatically activated countermeasures. When alien ships detected those countermeasures, their systems interpreted them as offensive weapons being prepared for firing. The first shots were fired by machines, not by conscious decision of either species. Plasma beams from alien ships met gravity distortion fields from human vessels in a display of destruction that lit up the outer solar system like a deadly fireworks show. What should have been humanity's quick destruction turned into something far more terrifying for the alien fleet. Human ships didn't just fight back, they learned and adapted in real time. As alien weapons hit their shields, human computers analyzed the energy patterns and instantly developed better defenses. When human weapons proved ineffective against alien armor, they reconfigured themselves into entirely different types of attacks within minutes. The alien commanders watched in growing horror as human tactics shifted and evolved during the battle itself. These weren't just advanced weapons, this was technology that improved itself while being used in combat, exactly like the ancient enemy that had once terrorized the galaxy. 12 hours of battle changed everything both species thought. They knew about warfare. Commander Veltar had commanded fleets for over 1,000 years, had seen the destruction of entire civilizations, but nothing had prepared him for what he witnessed as human ships began demonstrating abilities that defied every law of military science. At first, the alien fleet had expected a quick victory. 12 human ships against 8,000 alien vessels should have been over in minutes. But as the hours passed, Veltar watched his tactical displays with growing terror as those 12 ships not only survived, but began to fight back in ways that made no sense. The human ships weren't just defending themselves, they were learning from every attack. When alien plasma cannons hit their shields, the human vessels analyzed the energy patterns and within minutes had developed better defenses. When alien missiles proved effective, human ships began creating countermeasures that turned those same missiles against their creators. But the real horror came when human ships started copying alien technology and making it better. They didn't just steal designs. They improved them, combined them with their own innovations and created hybrid weapons that no engineer in galactic history had ever imagined possible. Lieutenant Zhong gripped the controls of his human fighter as he dove through a storm of alien fire that should have vaporized him instantly. His ship's computer was screaming warnings about impossible maneuvers, but Zhong had stopped listening to the safety protocols hours ago. "Computer, can we use that asteroid's gravity to slingshot around and hit them from behind?" he asked, pulling his fighter into a dive that should have torn the ship apart. "Negative, Pilot Zhong. That maneuver violates 17 safety protocols and 3 laws of physics." "Perfect," Zhong grinned, pushing his engines to maximum power. "Let's violate a few more." Human pilots were compensating for their technological disadvantages with creativity that made them impossible to predict. They used gravity wells as slingshots to achieve impossible speeds. They turned solar wind into weapons by channeling it through their ship's magnetic fields. They treated the laws of physics not as absolute rules, but as guidelines that could be bent when necessary. What the aliens found most terrifying was that human tactics kept evolving during the battle itself. Standard military doctrine said that combat strategies were planned in advance and executed according to established procedures. But human fighters were improvising new attack patterns every few minutes, creating solutions to problems that had never existed before. Then came the moment that made Commander Veltar realize they were facing the return of their ancient nightmare. Human ships began replicating themselves. Using captured alien matter converters and human engineering innovation, Earth's fleet started to grow during the battle. 1 human ship became 2, then 4, then 8. Each new vessel incorporated Lessons learned from the previous engagements, creating an ever-evolving force that became more dangerous with each passing hour. "Sir," Veltar's tactical officer reported with panic in his voice, "the human fleet has tripled in size in the last hour. Each new ship appears to be more advanced than the previous generation." This was exactly what the ancient archives had described. Technology that improved itself, vessels that could reshape themselves during combat, an enemy that grew stronger by fighting. Back on Earth, Admiral Park watched the battle unfold from his command center on the lunar base. Through real-time feeds from the combat zone, he could see human ships performing maneuvers that should have been impossible. His pilots were pushing technology beyond its designed limits and somehow making it work. But as he watched, Park began to understand something that chilled him to the bone. The same genetic markers that had allowed ancient humans to reshape entire star systems were awakening in his species. The mathematical intuition, the ability to see solutions that others missed, the natural understanding of how to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe. It was all there, buried in human DNA for millions of years. They were becoming what the galaxy feared most. The same power that had once terrorized civilizations was flowing through human minds and human technology. But there was one crucial difference that Park realized as he watched his pilots carefully avoiding alien evacuation pods and targeting only military systems. Ancient humans had possessed godlike power without wisdom. Modern humans were learning restraint, even as they discovered their true capabilities. They had become something their ancestors never were, beings with the power to reshape reality who chose not to use it for destruction. The moment that changed, everything came when Dr. Hyun's hands trembled as he prepared to send the most important transmission of his life. After days of analyzing the quantum patterns in human mathematical thinking, he had discovered something that would either save or doom both species. "Emergency transmission to Galactic Council Command," he broadcast on the highest priority channel. "I have definitive proof about the nature of these humans. The genetic markers are a perfect match. These beings are not the return of our ancient enemy. They are the evolutionary descendants of that same species." The battle stopped almost instantly as both fleets received the transmission. Across thousands of ships, weapons powered down as commanders tried to process what they had just heard. Dr. Kim, working frantically in Earth's command center, was simultaneously analyzing the alien historical archives that Hyun had transmitted along with his revelation. What she discovered painted a picture of humanity's forgotten past that was both terrifying and tragic. "The original human diaspora left Earth over 2 million years ago," she announced to the stunned human leadership. "They spread across the galaxy and evolved into something that transcended normal physical existence, but they developed godlike powers without the wisdom to use them responsibly. The ancient humans had possessed abilities that defied imagination. They could manipulate matter at the quantum level with pure thought, reshape entire solar systems to suit their needs, and bend the fundamental laws of physics to their will. But they had remained essentially childlike in their approach to power, using it without considering the consequences. Their war with the ancient galactic civilization wasn't really a war at all," Dr. Kim continued, studying the translated records. "It was more like a cosmic tantrum. They reshaped reality because they could, not because they needed to. They treated the universe like a playground, and billions of innocent beings paid the price." The archives showed images that hurt to look at. Stars arranged in impossible geometric patterns, planets carved into artistic sculptures, regardless of the civilizations living on them, entire sectors of space where the laws of physics had been rewritten so many times that reality itself had become unstable. But something remarkable happened in the middle of this terrifying revelation. Captain Su, commanding the human fleet, made a decision that proved modern humanity was fundamentally different from their ancestors. "All human vessels, this is Captain Su," she broadcast to her fleet. "Stand down all weapons. Maintain defensive. Positions only. We will not fire unless fired upon." Her officers stared at her in disbelief. The human fleet had gained tactical advantage during the battle. Their adaptive technology had allowed them to match and even exceed alien capabilities. They could have pressed their attack, and possibly won. "Sir, we have them on the run," her tactical officer protested. "Our ships are performing better than theirs. We could end this conflict right now." "That's exactly why we won't," Captain Sue replied firmly. "We've learned something our ancestors never understood, that having the power to destroy doesn't mean we should use it. This single act of restraint, broadcast to every alien ship in the fleet, proved that modern humans possessed something their evolutionary ancestors had lacked. Through millennia of their own devastating wars on Earth, humanity had learned that power without restraint leads only to more destruction. The Galactic Council faced an impossible choice. They could complete their original mission and destroy these inheritors of ancient power, ensuring that the nightmare of the past could never return. Or they could attempt something that had never been tried in galactic history, working with beings who possessed universe-shaping abilities and teaching them cosmic responsibility. Elder Thakmor, who had lived through the terror of the ancient war, cast the deciding vote. But he wasn't thinking only of the fear and destruction he had witnessed. He was remembering what the galaxy had been like before that war, a place of exploration, wonder, and unlimited potential. "We spent 5,000 years learning to fear the unknown," he announced to the Council. "Perhaps it's time we remembered how to hope for something better." The choice was made. Instead of destruction, they would try something unprecedented. Partnership with the children of their greatest nightmare, teaching them to use their inherited power wisely. 6 months after the battle that almost destroyed 2 civilizations, representatives from across the galaxy gathered on Earth to witness the end of an era. The Silent Protocol, which had governed galactic civilization for 5,000 years, was officially dissolved. In its place, they signed the Open Frequency Compact, an agreement that would change the future of the universe itself. "Today we choose hope over fear," announced the Galactic Council's senior representative as he placed his signature on the historic document. "Rather than hiding from the unknown, we will face it together, with humanity serving as our bridge to whatever wonders await us among the stars." The transformation had been remarkable to witness. Humanity, the species that had nearly triggered another galactic war, was now being entrusted with one of the most important responsibilities in cosmic history. They would serve as mediators for first contact situations, using their unique combination of devastating power and hard-earned wisdom to help the galaxy safely encounter whatever civilizations might be discovered in the future. Dr. Hune floated through the corridors of the first joint research station, built in Earth's orbit as a symbol of cooperation between species. Human and alien scientists worked side by side, combining human intuition with alien knowledge to push the boundaries of science in directions neither species could have achieved alone. "The quantum stabilization field is holding perfectly," reported Dr. Young, a human physicist working alongside her alien colleague. "The combination of our adaptive thinking and their established methodology is producing results that neither of us expected." Their first major project was developing safeguards against the very power that humanity was beginning to manifest. As modern humans awakened to their genetic inheritance, they needed ways to control and limit their abilities to prevent the cosmic disasters their ancestors had caused. Captain Lee stood on the bridge of the flagship of the new Galactic Response Fleet, watching mixed crews of humans and aliens work together with an efficiency that surprised everyone. When his communications officer, a young alien named Kethtal, detected an unknown signal from deep space, there was no panic, no fear of ancient enemies returning. "Signal appears to be mathematical in nature, Captain," Kethtal reported. "Definitely. Artificial origin, possibly another undiscovered civilization." "Excellent," Captain Lee smiled. "Prepare a response using the new protocols. Let's see if we can make some new friends." This was the new way. When unknown signals appeared on the cosmic horizon, they would be answered not with fear and weapons, but with hope and the possibility of expanding their growing community of worlds. Minister Ae walked through the halls of the new diplomatic center in Geneva, where representatives from dozens of species worked to establish protocols for peaceful contact with unknown civilizations. Earth, the planet that had once almost been destroyed for breaking galactic law, had become the neutral meeting ground where species could encounter each other safely. "It's ironic," she mentioned to her aide. "A year ago, we were completely alone. In the universe, now we're the diplomatic heart of galactic civilization. The transformation was profound. Earth was protected not by weapons or threats, but by humanity's unique understanding of both the terrible cost of cosmic war and the even greater price of eternal silence. They had become the galaxy's guardians against the very chaos their ancestors had once represented." The most symbolic change was what happened to frequency 427.331 itself. The forbidden call had become the welcome call, carrying a constant stream of mathematical poetry, scientific discoveries, and diplomatic overtures to civilizations yet undiscovered. Instead of terrifying silence, the frequency now sang with the voices of dozens of species sharing knowledge and friendship across the void. Dr. Su, now director of the Interspecies Communication Project, monitored the transmissions with deep satisfaction. "We're receiving responses from at least 12 previously unknown civilizations," she reported to the global leadership. "Each contact has been peaceful, curious, and eager to join our growing galactic community." The age of silence was over. The age of infinite possibility had begun, guided by a species that had learned to master not just the laws of physics, but their own nature.